Hello, hello. Hey
Hello.
guys. Hello.
Don't mind us.
Hello.
We were just having a conversation before you got here.
No, no worries at all. No worries. Um, we'll give everybody just a couple minutes to join. And so feel free to continue your conversation unless y'all were like, you know, saying bad stuff or something.
No, I was asking her what site she used for the Enneagram because I paid for an Enneagram test like a year ago and I think I deleted. I don't know. I've lost it somewhere.
Oh, really? Was it the Reti? RHETI?
I don't know. I don't remember. And I don't even know why I did it because it wasn't like for school. I'm really uncertain as to why I even did it. But
Sure. Do you remember your results?
I think I was a helper.
Okay. Type 2.
Is that a two? And then I had like a wing that was like, but I thought wings were like closer, like a one or a three, but I think I was a wing 10. Does that sound strange?
Um, Only because there's only 9 types.
Oh, so then yeah, that would not be right. So
um,
no, that's not going to be the one I'll use for this.
no, we'll go over a lot of the Enneagram stuff in this class, and so
Maybe I'm thinking of a
it's
different test. Is there a challenger?
there is a challenger that's type 8. Yep.
Eight. Okay, that was my wing, which is weird. Okay. I remember it was challenger, but okay.
So 8. So usually when you take the test there, twos and eights have a connection, and so there's eights will become when they're healthy, they'll become more like twos, and twos, whenever they're not as healthy, they become more like eights.
Okay. That's what
But
I think I remember reading that. When I'm angry, I swing more to like an eight.
and it's not necessarily unhealthy. It's just like when you're depleted.
Okay.
Yep. Yep.
Cool.
Um, well, welcome, everyone. Glad to see some new faces here. Also glad to see some old faces. Not that you're old. It's not what I'm trying to say. Y'all are all very young looking, as am I. Um, so really tonight is gonna be really pretty straightforward with us just kind of doing a brief overview of the class and what we will be covering in the course. And it won't be just a recap of the intro video. Did everybody get that, by the way? Were y'all able to watch that? Okay, good, because I had some challenges uploading it to YouTube, and I'm not like I'm still trying to figure that stuff out. And I'm actually pretty tech savvy, and so it's kind of frustrating whenever when I get humbled like that, which I do a lot. But I'm going to share my screen here, and we will get, let's see, cool. By the way, if y'all see me looking up, that's because I've got like a humongous screen above me. It's like a TV size, and I haven't figured out a good way to make it not look like I'm looking like in the stars here. So I apologize if it looks strange, but there we go. That's actually better. I've got y'all at the bottom now. Well, how's everybody tonight? My Enneagram 10 doing well. I wonder what the Enneagram.
I'm never gonna live that down, am I?
No, I'm
Um,
not. I'm so sorry, but and I wonder what the Enneagram 10 would be. That's my question.
it stops at nine, right?
It
Oh, I need
does.
to stop talking. Okay.
Hey, we should make up an Enneagram 10. Whatever that is, you tell
I'm so
me.
embarrassed, and this
No,
is
no,
recorded.
no. No, what's awesome is because I took the Enneagram about 15 years ago when I was in grad school with my own counselor, and I hated it. I hated it, hated it, hated it, because I was all about like empirical, science-based, objective number, quantitative data. And this thing is not that. And what's funny is that despite being an existentialist, I also have a very like science driven side where at the time after taking it, I remember taking it and writing a whole paper about being, I think it was it got me as a type 1 at the time, and I didn't know any better. So I said I was a type 1 wing 5. And so that's impossible. You can't have a wing like across the Enneagram like that. It's going to be either a 2 or a 9. As it turns out, I'm actually a type 7, wing 8. And despite not liking it, the Enneagram kept popping up in my world. And even in this class, so I've been teaching this class for, I guess, about 10 years now. And it kept coming up, and I would always roll my eyes when I had to talk about it in this class. And one day when I was procrastinating, not reading papers that grad students had written so wonderfully well, I was like, I'm gonna take this test again, whatever this thing is. And so I took it again, and since then it has been one of the most powerful personal growth, I would say, tools in my own world, and not just for me personally, but also for me professionally, and understanding my patients and understanding my employees and colleagues, and even my personal relationships. And I can tell you, the more you dig into it, the stranger it is that it becomes very, very accurate in its ability to predict what our core fear is, what our core values are, and what we really want out of life, and then ultimately how that relates to our own personal journey and growth and health and story, but also other people. And I mean, I personally like it a lot more than I like the Myers-Briggs. The Myers-Briggs has a little bit better, I say a little bit because it's not a lot, it's a little bit better quantitative empirical data to support it, its validity. So with all that said, there is a subtype of validity. I'm not exactly sure what you would call it, but there's a subtype of validity that, despite not being scientifically valid, something can be personally valid. And I think that's where the Enneagram falls. So I'm looking forward to reading y'all's papers that you write for this class. So let's get going. So for those who didn't have a chance to watch the intro video, it wasn't real long, I know, but I'm going to try to provide you guys at least once a week with a brief just rundown of topics related to each week's class, just to try to give you a little bit like a crash course of some of my ideas and perceptions and experience with the assessment tools and topics that we cover in the course. I'm gonna try to do that every week. I'm gonna try to do that by Wednesday of every week is my goal. I've finally figured out a good program to make that happen. So y'all will see that shortly. So stay tuned with that. Every week, I will also be reaching out just to touch base and hopefully encourage you guys a little bit, because I'm telling you, it wasn't that long ago that I was in grad school. In fact, it was 2018. It's whenever I graduated with my postdoctoral master's in clinical psychopharmacology. That's a mouthful. Where we had the same type of setup where once a week we would meet like this. And we had a professor who basically would be present for our questions and really focus on giving us space to ask questions about what the topics we were covering. And I remember thinking, I am in over my head. Yeah. That's a normal feeling in grad school. Okay. It's okay to feel like that. It's okay to feel like you're learning a different language sometimes, because really and truly you are, especially if you take the psychopathology courses that I teach. Is anybody in those classes this semester with me? All right. Was that Anne? Was that you?
Yes, I have the one that's after this one.
Oh,
The one
awesome.
at 8:30.
Sweet. Well, I will make sure to get sorry, I had to fix my camera there. I will make sure to get you caught up to speed next class then, and we'll get everybody caught up to speed hopefully, and take away some of the anxiety surrounding, all this information that you're doing everything you can to absorb, but never feeling like you're getting it all, right? Is that the way grad school feels?
That DSM-5 book, trying to just read it like a textbook, that is the head, because you want to like make notes or highlight. And so what I found is like I'm actually reading it and thinking, okay, well, I could take out like it's and the.
Sure.
The whole rest of it is so.
Well, what kind of the running joke that I have for that book is it is a extremely effective non-pharmacological approach for the treatment of insomnia. And so if you ever have trouble falling asleep, just whip out that teal green book that costs a lot of money. And it's actually cheaper though than probably prescription like sleeping medication. So and it's a good behavioral approach to condition yourself to fall asleep when you open that book, because it is not real exciting. I wish they would have had like somebody in there that had some sort of sense of humor that could have just thrown in at least a few dad jokes in there, because there's plenty of space in there for some dad jokes. But they
definitely got their money's worth out of the thesaurus.
They did not. You're right. Right. And they use words in there that nobody on the planet
Ever
uses,
yeah.
except for the 7 people that wrote that.
Yeah.
Well, the good news is for this class, you won't have to read the DSM-5, although I would encourage you, if you're not familiar with that book, you might want to go ahead and just buy it and just at least look at it, like not even open it, just look at the outside and anticipate having to learn it at some point, because really and truly, this class fundamentally is going to be about learning how to assess clients from all different angles in a way that is therapeutic and that provides you and your clients with concrete information that from which you can take practical next steps and figuring out how to help people quicker. As a prospective counselor, in general, most counselors out there don't spend a lot of their time doing assessments or administering assessments. And I always get the question from students, I really find these assessments interesting, and kind of wish I would have gone back and got my doctorate in this stuff, or so forth. But the reality is that 95 to 99%, I'm just kind of making that up, but it's pretty true. 95 to 99% of your assessment will be you. You are the assessment tool as a prospective counselor. Now, I can promise you, I've got at least over 1,000 like objective different tests that I can give in my practice as a neuropsychologist. Don't get me wrong, I am proud of those tests. I really appreciate the data that they provide, and they do provide a whole lot of information that can be helpful. But even with that said, they would not be useful unless I knew how to use myself as an assessment tool first and foremost. And the truth is that the longer you do this, the less you you will need those assessments as far as developing hypotheses, especially as it relates to making an accurate diagnosis and coming up with a concrete treatment plan that aligns with the data that you've gathered. I'll tell you, just to kind of a little bit more about myself, just so you kind of know where I'm coming from, because I've had this question a lot, is what is a neuropsychologist? So a neuropsychologist, I'm a clinical psychologist trained in both counseling, existential psychotherapy, and also cognitive behavioral therapy, because you can't ever not get trained in that, I guess, these days. And then also all of the personality and cognitive assessments like learning disability, IQ, the Rorschach and things like that. And then I went for an additional 2-year postdoctoral residency that along the way, I got my license as a psychologist, but was trained with one foot in neurology and behavioral neurology, understanding the brain and nervous system and even the whole body as it relates to behavior and emotions and thoughts. And then part of that was also on the forensic side, applying all those assessments to different forensic situations like criminal and civil suits. All that training included semesters worth at least each for each like week that we cover. Like, for example, we're going to spend 1 week covering IQ. Well, I did a whole semester, actually 2 semesters in just IQ testing, 1 class. And we're going to try to cover that in 1 week. And what I'm saying is that you can get all that training and it's great. And I'm proud of it. I'm glad I did it. But to be a good counselor, you don't have to have all that training, especially if you learn how to sharpen you as the assessment tool. And that begins with building a relationship with your client. And do we have any school counselors in here? All right. Not like, all right, like I'm excited. Like, all right, I'm surprised, because usually we get about half the class as school counselors. School counselors are all at school right now, probably working their 90 hours a week that they have to work during the school year. I don't know how they do it. Well, since most of y'all, or it sounds like all of y'all, are prospective professional counselors in some capacity, learning how to build your rapport, and I don't even like that word, how to establish a trusting, authentic relationship first and foremost will be the first step to the assessment process that really and truly, if you don't remember anything from this class, I'm hoping that you remember that, because ultimately you can give all the tests in the world, you can be the most sophisticated diagnostician on the planet, but you won't get accurate information unless you build rapport. Can anybody tell me what I mean by that, like with rapport?
Just a working relationship of trust between you and your client.
Yeah. And when you say working, what does that mean?
Evolving, ongoing, developing.
Yeah. And that wouldn't happen unless you're also, as a human being, risking some of yourself too, right? When I say risking, not unethically, but, well, I'll tell you, I'll give you an example. We had to go to the doctor not that long ago with my wife, and we go in there and we sit down, and I think it was a nurse or maybe a nurse practitioner comes in, and they just sit on their computer over there. We're sitting on, her feet are like dangling off the little table, like, on a little crinkly paper, what I'm talking about, where it makes you feel like you're 5 years old. It's cold in there. It's got the little bright light that's kind of flickering. It's like out of a social psych experiment. They walk in there, they don't even say hi or anything, and they just like start bombarding with questions. And there's a part of me, it's just like, we don't want to tell you anything, right? Like, I feel like I was in an interrogation. And if anything, as counselors, we have to be mindful of the fact that these are human beings that we are working with. It's easy to get caught up in like the hours that you got to accrue, or the even the insecurity or the self-consciousness of like, am I doing this right? It's easy to get caught up in that stuff. And I'll tell you the secret to developing rapport is being yourself, which begins with being a human being yourself and being vulnerable. Because why should we expect our clients to be vulnerable if we're not going to be? So obviously, I'm humanistic in my approach, or person-centered, if you will. Carl Rogers is one of my, I would say, top examples of what it looks like to be person-centered. But at the same time, even Carl Rogers had some limitations and his approach, where when we're doing assessments, well, let me ask you guys this. Does anybody work in an inpatient setting right now? Or has anybody ever worked in an inpatient setting?
I have before, not currently. I'm working in an outpatient setting.
Are you really? Where at an inpatient?
Oh, it was in Salt Lake City in Utah. Worked at a residential facility for recovering addicts people.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, firsthand then. And we weren't too far from each other. I was in Colorado Springs working at a dual diagnosis inpatient facility. And it is a very clinical atmosphere in most cases, where people kind of come in and there's like, we've got a time limit on how long they can be here. We've got third party, payers, insurance and stuff that we've got to worry about. We've got to get this many FaceTime like hours or FaceTime meetings, per psychiatrist, per nurse practitioner, the PAs, the social workers, and the counselors, and the floor techs. That was my job initially, by the way. But it is with that type of atmosphere, it's hard to, it's easy for us to talk about being, person-centered and kind of open-ended, and then trying to apply that to those situations where you've got all these constraints, and even like sometimes administration that doesn't want you to be real person-centered. It's a system that tries to work against that. And so hopefully my goal with this class is to try to blend both, where we're going to learn how to do these things. We're going to learn about these assessments, how to assess from all different angles from a therapeutic standpoint, while also being realistic that depending on the context, you will have to get creative in maintaining rapport while doing it. And it can be difficult.
I don't want to talk too much, but I can attest to that very much. I I worked at an IOP here in Dallas, and in that setting, I learned a much more person-centered approach, actually. And whenever I worked in that residential treatment facility, I tried to employ a lot of the skills that I had learned at the IOP, and it was very frowned upon. It was not okay. They were okay with the residents spending 6 hours a day watching movies while I was trying to engage them in different activities. And that was like, no, we don't do that here. So yeah.
We are kindred spirits, my friend, because I got in trouble all the time at Aspen Point up there in Colorado Springs, because I was in grad school at the time too, and it was, I had told him from the very get-go that I was existential, and like literally my supervisor was like, "What is that?" And I was trying to explain it. And if you've ever tried to explain existential to anybody, like, unless you're just a philosopher, you get kind of lost. Plus, that's actually the whole point of it. You're just like, well, I don't know. I mean, really, that's the answer is I don't know. But I got in trouble frequently for spending 18 minutes instead of 15 minutes in my intake with patients. And these are people who are acutely psychotic who didn't trust. They wondered what I was typing on my computer as we were trying to talk, because we did the simultaneous documentation. Yeah. So anyway, good news is that, well, I say good news. Good news is that you guys are going to learn and hopefully take that passion for remembering that we are working with human beings into the real world, and we're going to keep trying to change the system to make it better. And on top of that, you're going to get exposed to the real world a little bit if you haven't been exposed to it, and we'll talk through how to try to do this stuff in different contexts, because it's a lot easier in outpatient in most cases than it is in inpatient versus, the residential stuff, or if you've got, a supervisor that doesn't align with you theoretically, and so forth. So let's talk about your let me make sure. Are y'all still seeing the Moodle page here? Okay, great. Let's talk about your assignments and the 30-page paper that you've got due next week. I'm just kidding, guys. Y'all don't have 30-page paper. Man, I could feel like the tension just then. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out what's going on with my computer. All right, we're going to do this. Take it off there. There. Just a second. There we go. All right. That's better. All right. So it's only a 25-page paper. So 30 pages is too much, guys. I'm just kidding. There's no way I'm reading all that. Man, I tell you what, one of my first classes in grad school, we had a 20-page paper due. And I remember thinking, this professor's not going to read this paper. There's no way. But that person did. They sure did. And they marked it all up. It came back like red. Like, this is back when we had to turn stuff in like hard copies. And this was an old school person. And so like they had like I'm pretty sure it was like a red Crayola marker. It was just like, well, it's a pretty drawing that you made there. All right, let's talk about your textbooks for the class. So I picked out, I think it was last semester or maybe the semester before last, but I picked out the Essentials of Testing and Assessment book by Newt Krug, and I've actually met them. And because along the way, as I've taught this course, I've tried different textbooks that really skim the surface, in my opinion, much more so than what I would prefer as it relates to the real world of this stuff. And so I've got good feedback in previous classes with this textbook, The Essentials of Testing and Assessment, even though it's 2019. And I really appreciate the depth that it goes more into as it relates to the actual tests and talking through all the ins and outs of that. Because you won't find that kind of depth in most professional counseling courses. You'll find that this book would be something that you would see in like a psychology program for clinical psychologists, just so you know, like an intro to assessment. And so I want to give you all more depth, because it's really and truly why this class is important is because there's a lot of psychologists out there, and I try and I would say 99% of the time that I don't include myself in that, that when they do all this testing, they don't spend very much time with their patients to go over what they're looking at whenever they get their results back. So these patients will go back to their counselor and say, hey, here's my psych report. What in the world does this mean? And hopefully by the end of this class, you will feel a lot more comfortable being able to walk them through and explain, like, what are T-scores, what are standard scores, and what's an IQ, and things like that. And how does that relate to the different diagnostics and strengths and weaknesses from a cognitive or a psychological standpoint. And so this book, I feel like, would be a good reference for that. And if there's a new edition to come out, I'm not sure. I don't think there is just yet. My hope is to incorporate it moving forward. So please feel free to give me some feedback on this book. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and it might not help you this semester, but might help your future. The people who will take this class later. That book is where you will get your quiz questions and midterm and final exam questions from, or answers. And it's pretty straightforward, by the way. I mean, I try to make those questions complicated enough so that you have to think, but also follow along pretty closely with even almost in order in your textbook. A lot of people will ask us, say, well, I think grad school should be harder than this. And if you feel like this class is too easy, please let me know. I can make it harder for you if you would like. Because it's not about how hard a class is. And that's kind of a joke. I mean, kind of a joke, because I have had that feedback before. But this is more about facilitating what is already your passion, or should already be your passion. And so that you're probably going to be reading stuff like this anyway, because you want to learn about it. And hopefully the quiz questions and the midterm questions will help kind of guide you into what is more important, especially as it relates to any future licensure exam tests, and just really what you need to know fundamentally. Okay. The questions and the quizzes and the midterm and final exam, this is how I work, is that I don't assume that I have all the right answers in there, although I've tried to make sure that it's all correct. If you answer something and it's incorrect, but you feel like that's an error, I am all ears. And even at the end of the day, if I land on a different answer than what you land on, if you can show me your work and why you believe what you believe, folks, that's worth points to me. Because it's no longer about like who's right or wrong. This is, we're at the level that we're splitting hairs here for the most part. And if you can show me the research that supports your stance or your opinion on it, just like an expert in court, it's a valuable opinion at the master's level. All right. So please, I'm not gonna, you can't just be like, well, I think you're wrong, and Wikipedia says so. Like, obviously Wikipedia, but the truth is Wikipedia's gotten a lot better over time. There's actually quite a few good resources in there. Professors always shame it, but the truth is it's actually a decent place to start if you don't know something about something. But with all that said, I don't care about your grades as much as you do. I know you do, but I care about you learning. And I can promise you, the more you begin to care about your learning, the better you're going to do with or without making your A. When I say the better you're going to do, you're going to know more about what's pertinent to you and what's important to you and what will be helpful for you. Because I can tell you, I made 3 C's, I think, in grad school in my doctoral program. And 2 of those were in my psychopathology course, and the other one was in my neuropsych course. Yeah. And now I'm teaching that stuff. And guess what? Those C's don't reflect what I learned in those classes. Now, I don't very often give C's. In fact, most people make A's in my class. I think I did data tally one time, and it was like something like 96 or 97% people make A's. If you make a B, that doesn't mean you failed or that I'm like judging you from afar or anything like that. I don't care about your grades. I care about you learning. And so if you're on the edge of a grade, what I always do for everybody, if you're like one or 2 points from like getting like an A or whatever, you know, you've got like a 91 or a 90. I always go back and look in your Moodle history to see how much effort you put in the class, because it will tell me how long you spent like on each exam, and like, did you just fly through it and just, you know, guess, and then go back and correct all your guesses. Like, it tells me all that stuff. I don't have a lot of time to do that for everybody. I promise you I don't. But for if you're on the edge there, I always try to make it fair. And I'm happy to give people extra points for effort, just so you know. So the good news is all your stuff is due at the very, very end of class. Except for your week 1 quiz, which was technically due this past Friday. If you haven't done it yet, doesn't mean you can't do it. It's not closed. I had to take roll for the course, and I think I even have 1 more week to do that. And so I tried to put a deadline there that would get everybody moving, and hopefully you've gotten that done. But if you haven't, just try to get that done just as soon as you can so that I can take roll. Okay. Nobody's going to kick you out of class or anything like that. The registrar, I think they just show up in the middle of the night at your house, you know, demanding money. I'm not sure exactly what they do. I just know they're kind of scary sometimes. Just kidding. They're not really that scary. They are if you are mean to them. So just be nice to them and they won't be scary. Yep. It's kind of like the mafia. This is the registrar. Yep. They'll take care of you, but don't get on their bad side. Yep. With that said, all of your weekly quizzes, your midterms, and even your paper are due at the last day of class, which is, I think, November 16th, which seems like forever away, right? Because it's still 100 degrees outside. Or today was nice, but it's been really hot. Still feels like we're in the middle of July. But if that bothers you, that the due dates are too far out, because that's another feedback I've gotten, by the way, please feel free to finish those as on your own deadlines. I do that because, being a former student myself, I realize that you all have lives outside of this class, and that your whole world doesn't revolve around meeting my expectations in this course. And so there's going to be some weeks that you're going to have, you know, easier time than others keeping up with stuff, and that's completely expected and completely okay. I just want to also caution you, though, is that the 16th is the absolute last day to get stuff done, because your grades are due the next day. And so unless you want to end up taking an incomplete or withdrawing, I would encourage you to try to get everything done before then. Okay. As far as your papers go and things like that, I'm going to try to, about a week before the last week of class, I'm going to try to go back through whoever's turned in their stuff at that point and give you some feedback. And so if you turn it in like the last day of class, you probably won't get feedback. But if you turn it in, you know, like at least a week before, I'll be happy to give you some feedback. Mostly just talking about the Enneagram and stuff like that. And it's just cool to find out who you guys are, really. It's always reinvigorating for me to see folks going through a process that I went through and still am going through, and to see some light bulbs turn on when you're like, oh, well, here's my story. Here's how it all kind of connects. And this is why I'm going to be a counselor. And yeah, it's pretty cool. So, that's where the Enneagram text will hopefully come in handy. And I picked that one because it seems to be the most readable. There's a lot more in-depth stuff out there for sure. And even authors probably that have written better readability. But with the Enneagram, what you need to know is that how you ultimately perceive it, for the most part, there's some technical things that are correct or incorrect about it, but how you perceive it is ultimately how it will be useful for you. That makes sense. There's a subjectiveness or a phenomenology to it that it becomes, it fits you like a pair of clothes, and not everybody's clothes are going to fit everybody else. And so hopefully, even if you don't plan on using the Enneagram, it will at least give you some time to self-reflect through this class, which ultimately, in my opinion, is number 2 on the important, becoming a counselor list, is learning how to self-reflect. So, and I know a couple folks have taken the Enneagram before. Has anybody else taken it before? Okay, so there are some free ones online, and there are some ones that you can pay for. And what you really need to know about it is that there are no tests out there that will tell you what type you are. You will ultimately decide what type you are by learning about all the different 9 types. And the tests, all they do is kind of help facilitate that process by giving you like a hint about what might be a good starting place to dive in to figure that out. Like I said, whenever I first took the Enneagram, it said I was a type 1. It was like 175 were the top 3 numbers. And I wrestled back and forth through all that stuff, retook it a few different times, and eventually landed on a 7. And then even at times now still argue with that, and which makes sense because 7s don't like to be pigeonholed. So that kind of flows with it. But my hope is that you'll be able to integrate that information with the Myers-Briggs. And if you haven't taken the Myers-Briggs, please let me know, because by this point you should have probably already taken that as far as your learning style goes. And just a quick, I always like to do this, just a quick survey. How many J's do we have in this class on the Myers-Briggs? You can just, if you know how to raise your hand on the little emoji deal. Are there any J's? A lot of INFJs in our.
I think mine is a J, but I'm looking.
Let's see if I can get all of y'all. All right. So how about P's? I guess that'd be the rest of y'all. All right, my P's. My P's are my peeps. I'm a P. Yep. I get it. I get it. We like to be late with everything. We're open-ended. Yeah, kind of free spirits. We drive the J's crazy bananas. I'm sorry, Jays. But good news is that you can be a P and pretend to be a J while in grad school, because that's what I did. Because every time I took the Myers-Briggs in grad school, I was like a J. Everybody's like, yeah, of course you're a J. You're just like so uptight all the time. Like, no, that's not what J's are. They're not uptight. That was my response. They're like, yeah, okay, Jay. Anyway, J's, I have such a passion for, because most of the folks in our counseling program, or J's, and I'm excited because that means y'all are organized, and I'm so jealous of that. I really am. Please don't ever change. Don't ever become a P. It's life is hard as a P, except unless you're a billionaire, you don't have to worry about stuff anymore. Then all of us P's, that's what our dream is as P's. Okay. No, but really though, about 85 to 90% of grad students at Amberton are J's, just so you know.
I
Yep,
have a question.
sure.
So I'm just thinking I'm an INFJ, and
Uh-huh.
you keep saying like, are you a J or are you an I? So I'm
Mhm.
kind of
A J or a P.
thinking I'm INFJ.
Uh-huh.
So I'm because you're only doing, I guess you're doing the first letter of maybe the Myers-Briggs.
So the J or a P, so you could either be an INFJ or an INFP.
Oh, okay. So you're talking about the last letter.
Uh-huh. Yep.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
Now I understand. Okay. All right.
Yeah. And the
All right.
J,
Yeah, I'm J. But I procrastinate though.
hey,
But I
I
also have ADD, so
I
It's
I
weird.
have ADHD as well, and I'm telling you, the J, if you're a J with ADHD, then you have successfully learned how to compensate. All right. And there's
Well, that
nothing
teaches-
wrong. And there's nothing wrong with procrastinating as long as you're good at time estimation. If you're not good at time estimation,
I get it done.
that's where I always struggled, was be like, I was an undergrad. I said, you know what, it's gonna take me like an hour to write this 10-page paper. Yep. And it's like, 3 days later, I'm turning it in a week late. So that's how it happens. With
Yeah,
that said,
so it's the last letter that you're talking about.
Yep. So with this class, the first few weeks are really the hardest weeks. When I say the hardest, meaning we're gonna have to talk about a little bit about math, a little bit about like statistics and understanding like the normal bell curve and the different types of scores and percentile ranks and how to interpret that stuff and validity and reliability, stuff like that will be on your licensure exams. But once we get past that, and that's stuff we have to get past that because that's fundamental, we very quickly get into talking about intelligence testing and the actual tests and start actually having more fun in this class. Okay. So I'm not saying it's not going to be fun. We're going to make this math fun. Because statistics, just so you know, it's my dad joke is, because I'm terrible at math, like real math, like calculus, I'm terrible at. But statistics, I am awesome at, because that's like most of my job, because it's a poor man's math. It really is. It's like you don't have to really know math. It's just like counting things. You just can't, all you got to do is count. If you can count, you can do statistics. That's pretty much what these test scores are, is if you can count, you're good. All you got to do is add up the bell curve and understand what each little section accounts for. Once you get past that, you've got like 95% of test interpretation down. Okay. So don't let it bog you down. Don't get lost in all the, Pearson's R. Am I going to have to memorize all these equations and stuff? Nope. Not for this class. You're not going to memorize that stuff. Mostly for your licensure exams, you won't have to memorize those things either. You're going to have to know kind of, generically what is, correlation and what would be a high correlation, Pearson's R, stuff like that. But you can get there when you take your licensure exam and then forget about it after that. Okay. Because I'm telling you, if they asked me that on the stand, I would probably just make something up. I'm just kidding. You can't do that on the stand. Keeping you guys honest. Yep. Make sure you're listening. It's called perjury. Everybody's okay with it. Everybody's just going to be okay with me being a perjurer. Nobody's going to say anything. Thanks, guys. Y'all got my back. I appreciate it.
Want to get an A?
I don't care if Dr. Armstrong goes to jail. I'm getting my A. But really though, once you get past that stuff, the class does get more interesting. And my plan is to get a volunteer each week to take one of these tests that I can give like remotely. And if you're interested, we will, yeah, we'll do some testing so that y'all can kind of see what it looks like a little bit, even if we're going to be online. Okay. Sound good? There's one test that's it's one of the ADHD tests, and I'm so excited about showing you how unexciting the test is. I'm very excited about that because it's imagine the most boring test and then times it by 1,000, and then it's like 12 a.m. and you're really tired. Okay. That doesn't even come close to this test. Just wait.
I'll volunteer for this.
Okay. Well, it is a
That
20.
the-
It's
Is it 6 sections? Is it that the test? The one with the 6 different columns or whatever it is?
No, so this one is it's called the IVA 2. It's it's 20 minutes of the world's most boring voice saying 1 and 2. And every time you hear 1, you got to click your mouse. And then on the computer screen, it's flashing the numbers 1 and 2 randomly. So every time you hear or see a 1, you got to click your mouse for 20 minutes. And it's not like it's a bland screen and literally the world's most boring voice you've ever heard. Like just it's like meant to put you asleep. And so anyways, I'm excited about that unexciting test because I'm hoping to expose y'all to some of that stuff so you can kind of feel what it feels like whenever your clients go through these things. Because that test I have to give to 6-year-olds, it goes all the way between 6 and 96. It's been normed on people 6 to 96. So imagine giving that to a 6-year-old. Yeah, it takes a lot of prizes, guys. A lot of like it ends up costing me money extra in prizes to get 6-year-olds just to hang in there for 20 minutes on that test. Anyway, so we'll talk all about that, about how to get your clients to give good effort and to not be too anxious to take tests and to understand that this is all that stuff is going to help them. And I'll show you how to help them with it. So what questions y'all have for me? Nobody's worried about me and the perjury stuff. That's cool. That's all right.
If you go to jail, you can't grade our stuff.
That's true. Actually, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it might be best to not do that.
Yeah. I have been on the stand, or not honest, I've been in a case before where an expert perjured themselves and like admitted to it. And everybody's just like, what just happened? Anyway, even the judge was like, what? Okay, well, you're in trouble. Yeah, it was really strange. That's the first time the judge woke up for that whole trial. He was asleep. Y'all believe that judge is asleep during stuff? Like they just sleep. Nobody wakes them up. Everybody pretends like they're not sleeping or snoring.
No, my husband's a litigator.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, things happen.
Oh yeah.
Some crazy stuff he's told me. Yeah.
Especially out in East Texas, man. It's like a whole
Well, yeah, yeah.
whole different world.
West, East Texas, small.
That's
Yeah.
true. Very true. Your husband's a litigator, is that right?
Yes.
Man, that-
Yeah.
that's my some of my best friends are, because I've made a lot of friends with attorneys and stuff. And that's, by the way, the last point I'll make about assessments. These assessments, if you remember anything else, anytime you give any test as with a license, or even if you don't have a license, you're under supervision, be prepared to be able to defend it in court. Because if you don't feel comfortable doing that, you probably shouldn't be given that test. Because I'm telling you, attorneys love psychological tests because you can interpret them all kinds of which ways, and they get to ask, folks like myself, are you a real doctor? I heard counseling and psychology is a soft science. They always ask me that. I always ask them, it's like, you mean like physically hard? Like you're talking about like, tensile strength or what are we talking about? They're like, you, and they get real flustered. They're always like, you know what I mean? Like soft science. Like, oh, okay. Like texture wise, I gotcha. I usually can get the judge to chuckle. All right. Well, hey guys, I appreciate y'all's time tonight. Hopefully, this wasn't just a waste of time. I promise you, moving forward, we will have a lot more in-depth discussion about the actual topics, and I would encourage you to read your stuff. And so we don't all just stare awkwardly at each other for an hour, and that you have questions. And if you don't have questions, we'll just do that as a little activity. We'll just stare awkwardly at each other as a how to be here and now present. Sound good? Yep, awesome. And P's, by the way, if you're going to be late to class, don't worry about it. I'm not going to judge you. All right, you won't get judged. J's, I know y'all going to be early. Okay. Hey, listen, that's worth a lot of money someday. Being a J, it's worth a lot of money. All right, and a good grade. Hey, y'all have a great night. We'll see y'all next week.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks.
Take
I'll see you
care.
in like an hour and a half.
Let's see ya. Oh yeah. Sorry.
Good night.
Thank you.
Take care.